Welcome to another episode of NYC Bike Culture. Today, very much of a road racing focused episode. So if that's not your thing, you don't have to listen. But I think it shows you a little bit too about the difficulties of event organization, especially given the current times with the pandemic still going on, with still a lot of cases in the community, but also the vaccine coming, and how the race organizers, the local race promoters, deal with a lot of these regulations. And of course also deal with the permitting processes. I had the opportunity, and I'm very thankful for being able to talk with Charlie Issendorf, the race director of the Prospect Park races, Tom Maines, the race director of Floyd Bennett Field Racing, and Alex Koch, the race director of a variety of races, including the upcoming time trial at the Rockaway Channel. And he just announced also that he will have races at Randall's Island in May and June. So those three I was able to talk to. I also reached out to and got a response from CRCA. The leadership of our club does not want to talk on camera. They made that clear about the race schedule, but they also communicated to members, and they also told me that they're excited to get the race season started, but they prefer to, and I respect that, communicate centrally through the organization, the communications, and they have announced that it's looking like they will also start in June. They have announced it to members that they will start ramping up things and with coaching and some online events and membership opening, and then before June, and then June through September will be the race season based on what CRCA has announced. And I think that is also something you can see on, and I want to refer to before you watch what the race organizers have to say. I want to refer to a little bit the three, I would say, central resources. There's probably more, but USA Cycling lists events that are permitted through them, which aren't all of them, and they also list some other bike racing or bike riding events. So go to USA Cycling. I'll put these in the notes on YouTube, the links to those organizations. USA Cycling has an events calendar. I got to be honest, it's not the best. It's not a particularly good online tool. It has a lot of flaws. It's kind of a headache to work with. It doesn't have a map function, which it used to. That used to be a lot better. You're probably better off going to BikeReg, which is an event sign-up page that provides event sign-up, race sign-up for the bike community in pretty much the whole country now. They effectively have a monopoly, certainly in the Northeast here in the New York City area. I can't think of any events that are not on BikeReg. So go to bikereg.com if you want to sign up for an event. USA Cycling will also take you there, but they might also list some events that are permitted through them, so but aren't on BikeReg yet. So those schedules aren't always exactly the same. Sometimes races still get canceled. You can also go to NYSBRA, the New York State Bicycle Racing Association's website. Also going to put that in the show notes. And they keep a very handy Excel spreadsheet updated, constantly updated calendar on New York State racing. So if you want to go beyond that, which if you go outside New York City, obviously you're very quickly in New Jersey, you're very quickly in Connecticut, you're quickly in Pennsylvania even, or fairly quickly, right? Then you can also go to those local area associations if you're into bike racing, right? But again, it should all show up on BikeReg, and it should all show up at some point at USA Cycling if it's a USA Cycling permitted race, which they don't have to be. But if you are a racer and want to get things like upgrade points and want to become a racer that goes through the system, then you will probably end up having to do USA Cycling races, which is just the national governing organization, right? With this NYSBRA being the local governing organization for New York State. So I don't want to keep this going much longer, but you can always reach out here too if you have questions. Once again, it looks like race season is probably going to be in full bloom starting in June. We don't know. We have to be careful still with COVID numbers. We still have to be careful with the regulations, but it looks like vaccinations are going up, and that's great. I got my first one, and that's I think everybody can see a little bit the light at the end of the tunnel, and I can't blame people for getting excited about that, as much as there are other things that are more important that are going on as well. that are more important than bike racing. So this episode, a little bit focused on bike racing, focused on the perspectives of 3 race organizers. We'll start with Charlie Issendorf of Prospect Park, then Tom Maines, who will also help us a little bit talk about Harlem Skyscraper, which I haven't heard back from that race promoter, but it looks like that will be on in June, according to Tom, who works with them. I also did not reach out to the Rockley organizers. It's a New Jersey event, and I really focused on events in the city only this time to keep it a little bit more compact. But if keep an eye too on the Rockley crit, especially if you're somebody who lives in the Bronx or Manhattan, that's totally doable to ride there. It takes you up 9W into Rockley, New Jersey. There's a little crit there on Thursdays, or has been in the past. I don't know what the status is there. So that's something to watch out for as well. And in the conversation with Tom, it comes up, there's obviously New Jersey events that are going to be coming too. But Alex, also quick note on that. You can see all the conversations are a little bit older some now because I was waiting for CRCA and hoping to get them on camera as well. But Alex, in the meantime, has pulled off a couple of time trials. We talked about that. He's got a couple of time trials on Rockaway coming up, and then he's just launching racing at Randall's Island, and that's going to be, it looks like 3 events right now, 2 in May and 1 in the first week in June, and then Charlie's events in Prospect Park will be starting June 12th and moving. You can see his race dates on his social media, and I will link to those as well. Tom with Floyd Bennett Field is not sure yet, but we're looking, he's positive that something is going to happen at some point, and then we'll see from there. But I'll let them speak for themselves now, and hopefully you'll enjoy this, and hopefully you'll find this useful. And give all the race organizers, everybody, whether they're talking here or not, give them a lot of credit for going through this past year, and also trying to deal now with an even more strenuous permitting process and more regulations. Give them a lot of credit for that, and really, as you come back to racing, don't expect it to be exactly like before. If you haven't done it before, then you don't know what it's like, but spread out and be still careful with COVID, follow the regulations. The events will be safer that way. The events, hopefully nobody will be affected by COVID. Vaccines aren't 100% foolproof, right? So be careful, still spread out. I think that's important also because we have a tendency to congregate before and after, which is great, socializing, but I think we'll have to keep that down a little bit. And I think all the race organizers pretty much say that as well. So I know that's hard, but try to stay spread out a little bit. We are in open air. There's usually a lot of wind, like at events like Randall's Island, for example, especially or at Floyd. But try to stay spread out or in kind of smaller pods that you know each other. And also, I think be safe racing. I know we're all excited to come back. We're really excited to come back, but I think the first priority has to be, especially now, to just not do anything stupid in the races. Be safe when in doubt. Maybe pull back. There will be enough races this year. You don't have to race like every race is the last one. Just be safe. Take care of yourself. Take care of others. Don't crash. Good luck with that. And if you prioritize that, I think good results will come at the end. And if good results don't come, you'll still have fun at least. And that's what matters, I think, the most. So enjoy the interviews. I hope you get something out of that. And you can reach out to the race promoters or me if you need more info too. Thank you.
Okay, I'm here with Charlie Issendorf of Casino Cycling Club and also, of course, of the Prospect Park races. You're the race promoter. I have been for quite a while now. We've talked about this. I've had you as a guest on New York City Bike Culture before. We'll talk a little bit about the Prospect Park racing schedule for 2021. You announced, I think, last week what the schedule is going to be like, and it looks like we basically have the dates that are left starting in June, because typically you would have had April and May dates, I think, and those are gone for obvious reasons, but it looks like you've decided to start everything in June and then run the dates that you had already, that you've agreed on with the Parks Department, and kind of go from there. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So back in the fall, I think it was last November, that's usually the month that Prospect Park reaches out to me and says, hey, send us your dates for the following year, which would have been 2021. I submitted the dates, which was a positive sign that they were hopeful there would be races in 2021. And at that time, I even asked them. I said, "Well, if we're asking for the dates, I assume we're going to be racing again." And they're like, "Well, we'll schedule your dates, we'll permit them, and then we'll see what happens." So they were in touch with me throughout the winter, and as the first scheduled race drew near, March 14th, they're like, "Yeah, we're really not ready to have the races again. There's still some COVID restrictions, which are a little bit fluid. To be honest with you, I didn't fully understand them, and even my Prospect Park contacts were not clear as to what they were. So it was in the best interest to just cancel the March races, the April races, and I think I had one date in May. I think it was actually May 1st. And we decided just to cancel those and start again in June.
Yeah, I mean, that obviously makes a lot of sense. Logistically, that's a lot easier. Like you said, you already had the dates, right? And those were, we should clarify, there's two race series, right? There's the Lucarelli Castelli Cup and this Castelli series, and they offer slightly different race fields, a 1, 2, 3, a 5, right? And a 4, I think, and then we have the 2, 3s and Masters. So there's a few different fields out there. Do you anticipate, so it sounds like the main determinant factors was really the requirements from the Parks Department that really decided when things were going to happen again. It's not like USA Cycling or anybody else had anything to do with that, really.
Yeah, correct. I mean, USA Cycling was ready to permit the events. They've made it pretty clear that if we want to start racing, we can. But obviously, city and state rules come way before USA Cycling, right? So, we had to wait to get the all clear from the Parks Department before we could actually move ahead.
Right. And you said, I think, that you coordinated with, for example, with CRCA, which I'm assuming you've done in the past too, to the best of your ability to avoid overlaps. And I think over the last year, certainly there hasn't really been an overlap between CRCA races and your races. Do you anticipate, was that more of an issue this year, or do you anticipate that there being more overlaps, perhaps not with New York City, like races in New York City, but races around, that there's a lot of overlap in June, July, August?
I mean, I definitely reach out to CRCA and vice versa. They reach out to me. We try to schedule our races so that there is no conflict. We're at the mercy of the parks, though, right? So the Parks Department tells us the dates that we have and the dates that are available, and I contact them. They contact me, and we try to work it out. It was more of an issue years ago. I'm not exactly sure why it's not an issue as much as in the past, but it seems the last couple of years either it's just dumb luck and we get good dates, or we're just being more conscious of it. I don't know, but typically we have maybe one or two conflicts. There's usually one in August that's just unavoidable. I mean, the problem with conflicts is that first of all, there's usually not enough racers to have two races on at the exact time. I mean, we're definitely privileged. The fact that we could even have decent fields with the conflict. It's more of an issue where we share the same moto pacers, officials. Tom on the camera works CRCA and my races. So it's more, it's not so much the racers, it's more the staff, right? Like it's tough when we have races on the same day.
Yeah, for sure. You rely on a lot of part-time professionals or full professionals like Tom, but a lot of volunteers too, and that's a lot of staff. And I think that maybe that leads into kind of the question of Prospect Park and Central Park are maybe trickier to run in a pandemic with all the volunteers that you have and with all the course marshals and the professionals on site. Was that part of it? Do you think that Prospect Park is maybe, especially with the COVID regulations and with maybe also, I talked a little bit with Tom about this, more people still being out and about exercising because they don't have the usual summer plans or activities like that. So there's more park users. Has that been a concern too? Or do you think Prospect Park is trickier to run in that way?
I don't think it's trickier. I think CRCA and Casino will both have the same challenges this year with the new reality of like you said, maybe people not going away, the parks being more crowded, not as much indoor activities to do. I don't know what indoor basketball is like, but who knows if other sports are still being affected, right? So people may just be wanting to go to the parks more. What I am concerned about are the new challenges. and I'm not sure if they'll still be in place in January, but I'm already starting to think about, well, how do I keep people 6 feet apart at registration area? Like, as you know, anybody that's gone to an early morning park race, if the race starts at 6 a.m., at 5:50 a.m., I have about 250 people that literally appear out of nowhere in the last 10 minutes looking to get their number. So it's just a sea of bikes and human beings with long lines desperately trying to get their number in the last 10 minutes. So even though registration opens at 5 a.m., an hour before, it's just a handful of people until about 10 minutes before the race. So I'm not sure what that is, to be honest with you. I need to figure that out in the next couple of months. What registration is going to be like, riders congregating. I rent two portable bathrooms. There's usually long lines for the portable bathrooms. Yeah, so there's a lot of challenge ahead of me that I need to figure out. But the thing about New York City bike racing is that we've always been fringe, we've always been underground, we've always had to make things work. So we'll make it work, like we've done with other challenges in the past.
Yeah, and I think that that's the New York attitude too, right? We'll make it work. And I think you're right though. The habit has been to fall out of bed like an hour or something before the race starts, and then you show up last minute and get your number and you're ready to go. And because you're riding, usually most people are riding to the venue, so riding to the park, so they have that warm up in already. Include like that's the same thing I do. I show up a little bit earlier, but sometimes I show up a little late too, and then you know what it's like. So it sounds like the regulations, even in June, are probably you're anticipating they might change, but we might still see something like that where the lines are going to have to be distanced, and we're going to have to really anticipate maybe having to show up a little bit earlier. Is something that racers might have to consider, or might really have to do, or you might call on them doing that in June, but who knows by then, right?
Yeah, yeah, and there may be stricter regulations. I don't know. Maybe the only way to get this to work is to have some kind of a penalty. I've always been pretty lenient in the past. Registration's supposed to officially close 10 minutes before the start, but you see me sometimes. I hold up the race by 30 seconds because somebody's trying to pin on a number, or just whatever. A lot of people showing up. So I realize we're not professional bike racers, and if you woke up in the early in the morning, the last thing you want to be told is you can't race. So I've been pretty lenient about that in the past, but I may have to crack the whip a little bit more, right? Like registration closes at 5:50, and that's it, right? If you're late, you're late. Maybe there could be, just to give warning, because this is a good sounding board for me to get the message out. There could be staggered registrations, right? Like the master's registration is between 5:15 and 5:30. I don't know, and that's it. That's the window. I'm thinking about 3-4s might have also a separate time, and that's the window. And if you miss the window to come pick up your number, that's it. So that way it'll stagger the registration out a little bit, maybe separate the tables a little bit more. But yeah, there's definitely challenges ahead of us. But I do ask the cycling community to please work with us on these things. This is totally new, not only for you guys, but also for us race promoters. Trying to figure out how to make this work. So, if everybody cooperates, I think we can pull this off.
Yeah, it sounds that was exactly going to be my next question. What can we do as a community? But it sounds like stay up to date and stay informed on the regulations and on what you communicate, and play with the rules, and maybe show up 10 minutes earlier, show up 15 minutes earlier, if possible, right? I think that would be good. So on that note too, on the community, I remember, I think it was last year, so now a long time ago, and I know lots of things have changed, but you sent out a little short survey to people who had come to the races before. I'm assuming people you had in your kind of email list. And it was, back then, I think the question was largely around on what circumstances you would find it safe, or would you be willing to race in Prospect Park, I think. And that was, I want to say, in August or September. I think you were just kind of trying to get a gauge of how people were feeling and what the mood was out there. Do you remember, or did you look at those results? And I know that in some ways they ended up being sort of meaningless because it wasn't really the time and the place yet. But do you feel like you learned something from that, or what was the feeling back then? And do you think it's changed, or it's still the same?
So the reason I sent that survey out, and thanks for bringing it up because it's important, was because last summer all of a sudden there seemed to be some hope, right? Like things were starting to look better, the death rate was down or the infection rate was down. I'm not a COVID expert, but things were tracking in the right direction. I was like, you know what, we may actually get races in. Like, little did we know what would happen, but they wouldn't be mass start races, right? Like, so, and if they were mass start races, you may even have to race in a mask, right? So I said, you know what, let me send a survey out. And like you said, I do have an email database of everybody that's done a past Prospect Park race. So I sent a survey out, and I believe the questions. Well, one question was, would you come to a Prospect Park race, mass start, usual setup, if you had a race in a mask? The next question, and I'll share the results in a second, briefly. The next question was, would you come if it was an individual time trial? And the final question was, would you come if it was a four-rider team time trial, right? So, the thought process behind that one was that, well, it's kind of separated, right? It's you and three other teammates on the line, and we'll start groups off every minute, traditional team time trial format. So, it's kind of got that team element. It's not necessarily an individual time trial. So, long story short, the results were disappointing. They were all around 50% or lower people that would show up. So about half the people that normally would come to a race said they would show up. The problem is that with these Prospect Park races, the expenses are still the same, right? Like, I still need an ambulance, even for an individual time trial. I mean, anything can happen, or team time trial. I still need an ambulance. I still need marshals. I still need to hire officials. Motorcycle drivers I wouldn't need, but I still would probably need them even just roaming around just to make sure things are safe. So prize money, I would need to have some prize money. So if only 50% of the people that are gonna show up, money will be lost every single race, right? And while I love cycling, and as you know, and anybody knows me, it's my whole life for the last 42 years. I just can't afford to pay to organize races out of my own pocket. If I break even, it's one thing, but to lose money. So, and I just got the general feeling, to be honest with you, people just were like, you know what, let's just chill, let's just wait. I don't need to do a team time trial that bad. I think people were exploring more. I think people were going on 9W, people were riding outdoors. So in some ways, I think it was actually a good thing maybe to just take a break from racing. Racing is stressful, right? And there's a lot of pressure on you and your teammates to perform. I kind of felt like people just said, you know what, let's just take a break, and we'll start again when we start again, whenever that is.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I hope we all have had a good long time away from racing and feel motivated, not too motivated, but motivated when we come back, hopefully in June. That's interesting. Thanks for sharing those results. I think a lot of those sentiments I heard in the community as well. And I think, like you said, ultimately it's also for you. Neither Prospect Park nor a lot of the other New York City venues are cheap to run, right, with all the requirements. So even though that would have meant maybe 40, 50 people showing up, that's just not enough for that kind of venue that we're talking about. So, yeah. Anything else you want to add, or anything else? Oh, Casino Cycling Classic is the other thing that's in the fall, but that was already a date that you had already secured before. So I'm assuming that, given that the park is usually pretty booked, and traditionally speaking, the dates have been up until late August, you are not currently or particularly actively exploring adding dates, or is that something that's crossed your mind?
Yeah, additional dates just aren't available, right? And so the way I understand it, a lot of these dates have been grandfathered in from a long time ago. So, I'm sure there's other, not even bike race organizers, running organizers or whatever, that need to, still have their events in September. If you hear my dog barking in the background, I apologize.
Okay.
So, yeah, so additional dates are not available. And, I often get asked, why don't we race longer in October or November, right? I mean, and it's a good question, right? Because, racing in October is a lot nicer than in March often, right? Like, you still get 70-degree days in October. The problem is real simple: daylight. Even the Casino Fall Classic, which is typically the first weekend, in October. We have to start that race around 6:45 or 7. If we keep going later in October, will be, 7:15 is sunrise, 7:30. The permit says we can race till 8:30. I think Central Park is even earlier. So yeah, we just run out of daylight. That's the simple answer why we don't have races in October and November, because we still have to always finish at the same time. It's just that we keep starting the races longer and longer, and I really don't think people want to race for 30 minutes.
No, I think that's right. That we an interesting format, but probably not worth it. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Charlie. I think that's it from my side. Do you have anything else?
No. I'm really looking forward to seeing everybody again. Like I said earlier, there will be some changes. I do ask the community to please, just work with us until we figure this out, because this is all new for us too. But by grace is a survivor, so we'll make it work.
Yeah, we will make it work, and we're looking forward to it, and in whatever form it will be. Thank you, Charlie.
Cool. Bye.
I'm here with Tom Maines of Main Sport Timing. Tom is one of the promoters in the New York City bike in the area, New York City area. I think you're out in New Jersey, but you are now promoting the Floyd Bennett series Tuesday night, and you're also doing the timing for CRCA, or well, you had it all set up and you did it for a couple of races last season, and then we all know what happened, so don't need to elaborate. I'm very excited Tom's here, sharing a little bit of his plans, thoughts in terms of race promoting, and also in terms of the timing you're doing and some of the views you have on the 2021 race season. I'll also talk to the other race promoters, local race promoters, so this will fit in real nicely. But you're the first one I'm talking to. You were also the first one who did announce something specific, and I want to preface all of this saying we all know that if things change or anything can happen, but that's true every year, right? So obviously with the understanding that all of this is contingent on things developing the way they're developing right now, with more and more people getting vaccinated and permits and whatnot. But Tom, I think you're probably in the past not maybe mostly well known for, but a lot of the New Yorkers know you from running the Branchbrook series. And also the Somerville races over the last years, if that's correct. And you can correct me there. So maybe we can start with those two events, or you can also just tell us what 2021 is going to bring from your end.
Well, thanks for having me, first of all. Yeah, I mean, it's, I'd love to be able to tell everybody exactly what 2021 is going to look like this year, but I don't think any of us can do that. And, it's going to change throughout the year. But, I think we have, a clear path to get back to some sense of normalcy. So, I do promote the Branchbrook series. I've been doing that for, I think this would have been our 12th year doing it since we took it over. It's a great series. We get great support from Lucarelli and Castaldi, great support from the New York racing crowd. So we'd love to be able to do it, but following local guidelines and stuff, we just, we can't get the permits and stuff right now. But on the bright side, we have had discussions with the park. And they've agreed that, if things start to open up, restrictions ease, and they have available dates in the park throughout the summer, they are going to work with us to try and get some racing in. So we might be able to have a series, instead of having 6 weeks in the spring like we typically do, might be more like CRCA and Charlie, and we have 3 or 4 or 5 races throughout the summer, and maybe we can still do a series. So we are actively working with the park, and as soon as we can do something, we will certainly announce that. Because we want to be back at it too. I mean, that's, this is what I do. So.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's been always a great kind of season opener. I mean, it's freezing, but you kind of get the feel you want to be out there. And
yep.
You've always traditionally offered I think you've always offered 2 Cat 5 races. So a lot of, like, for the beginning races, especially, and for the Masters, I think you've had a lot of really good options. So we're definitely missing that, I think, early in the year. So that sounds like there is a chance, but you'll just have to kind of go with the flow and go with what the Parks Department there says, and then the available dates. But you haven't given up on that particular event yet.
No, not at all. We haven't given up on anything. It's just going to be a flexible, fluid year, and we're going to have to do what we need to do. The Cherry Blossom Festival, which is typically our kind of, we cap that series off with that race. We run that race on behalf of the park system as part of a larger festival where they do a 5K, they do art shows, they do a fun walk. So we do the bike race for them. That festival's been canceled, so Cherry Blossom won't happen. But again, if we have the opportunity to race later in the year, we certainly will. And that kind of, you also mentioned the tour of Somerville. I've been involved with Somerville for, I think, 8 or 9 years now. I came on board just doing timing and registration services. And then 3 years ago, Joe Sailing, Mike Malakoff, and myself formed a new nonprofit. We actually took the race over. So now we are the directors of the Tour of Somerville race series. And it's, it's definitely a different beast than like a Branch Brook. I mean, it's a big event. A lot of work goes into it. And, the only other time it's been canceled in its 78-year history was because of World War II. So, it was, there was a couple of years missed there, but that's the only time that the race hasn't been held up until last year. It's the oldest bicycle race in the United States. And, it was funny last year because I was, I don't want to say arguing, but I was having a discussion with Mike, one of my partners in the event, and he was pushing me to get registration open in early March. And I said, look, I'm just not sure what to do because things are not looking good and I don't know what to do. And he's like, look, let's just do it. So we were literally less than 12 hours away from turning bike reg on. And in that 12 hours, we went from let's have a bike race to we're going to cancel for the year. That's how quickly it happened. And it was a hard decision, but ultimately the right one.
In hindsight, definitely.
Yeah, and for this year, we looked at it and we made the decision pretty early on, about a month or so ago, after a lot of legwork to move the series to Labor Day weekend for this year, because we just didn't feel confident. Some of the preliminary races like Raritan, the crowds aren't quite as big, but having the amount of people we have in Somerville, we just didn't want to put anybody in danger. We want the community to be safe. I mean, the Tour of Somerville, while it is a great bike race, it really is about the community and Memorial Day. And, it's always been a downtown celebration for almost 80 years. So we worked with all the towns and we got approvals and they all thought it was a great idea to go to Labor Day. So we're going to move to Labor Day and hopefully things can go off as planned. And if it does go off as planned, we're actually expanding it to a 5-race series. So we'll have a Thursday night race in Easton, Pennsylvania, Friday night in Basking Ridge, Saturday in Bernardsville, New Jersey, Sunday in Raritan, and then traditional Monday in Somerville. So we're trying to ramp it up a little bit, and then what will happen is if Labor Day happens, we go straight back to Memorial Day. So 6 months later, you get to do it again.
Awesome. Yeah, I have to admit that to my shameful admission, I've not done Somerville. It was on my calendar for 2020, and now I think I have to put it on for 2021. That sounds like when I saw that, I was like, it's very reminiscent of those two big kind of Midwest crit series, an Intelligenza Cup or Tour of America's Dairyland, 5 days of racing. I don't think 5 days of racing in a row, crit racing especially, I don't think there's anything on the East Coast that can rival that. Can you think of anything?
No, there was some stuff down south, like in Georgia area.
Used to be.
Like Speed Week.
Right.
They did some stuff, and I think they still are doing something, but not this year. But up in this area, there really isn't anything. Green Mountain stage race. There's a couple stage races, but not a week of crit racing. We've actually talked. We actually have interest from a couple of other towns, which I'm not going to name because we haven't, gotten to that point yet. But we have the possibility to expand further if things work well. We're working with sponsors and trying to line that all up. But we actually have an opportunity to expand it even further. So, not making any promises, but stay tuned.
Yeah. Well, it sounds fantastic in some ways. At least for this year, you're really able to put together a good schedule. And if you can take that energy into 2020, like you said, maybe do it all over again on the regular Memorial Day, and then you're not clashing with, say, you mentioned Green Mountain Stage Race. Although I think a lot of the type of race that goes to Green Mountain is not the type of race that shows up at Somerville. So I think I don't think it's too much of a clash, actually.
Yeah, it's probably not. And this year there's going to be conflicts. I mean, there's going to be road racing on top of cyclocross. There's going to be mountain bike racing on top of road racing. I mean, it's going to be a weird year, and we all just have to, get through it together and embrace it, and just keep riding our bikes and grow it, and let's have an even better 2022. I mean, it's all we can do.
Absolutely. I think you're right. I think there's going to be conflicts, and there's going to be some tough decisions to be made, maybe, but. And that was one of my questions. Do you anticipate then from probably June until September getting really busy every weekend? Or, I mean, right now, obviously, dates are filling up slowly, but that's obviously because people are working with permits and everybody's still cautious, right? I think.
Absolutely. There's a lot of races that are very cautious. there's the Wilmington Grand Prix down in Delaware has been postponed. He is looking for a new date. He hasn't canceled the event. So where does that land? Does it land in July, August, September? What does it land on top of? I'm already starting to get fairly busy for June. Again, what's going to happen? But we're going to stay optimistic. So June into July, we've got a bunch of stuff. September is shaping up to be very busy.
So this is where you're doing, these are events where you're doing timing. I know you're doing track too and all that. We should say that maybe you can, from your perspective as someone who does this professionally, right? This is a full-time job for you?
Yeah, this is all I do.
Yeah. So you've been busy behind the scenes, but obviously this has been like with many other industries, 2020 has been really rough. So hopefully 2021 at least that portion that we've just talked about of the year should be a good one. What are some of those events that you are that you're not promoting yourself, but that you are booked for? It sounds like.
There's quite a few. Last year before we shut down, I had almost 180 events under contract, and we ended up doing less than 30. So that shows you what happened last year. So a lot of those races will come back. Early season, we're going to miss a bunch of stuff. Some of the CRCA stuff, some of the Charlie's races, some of the Wilmington Grand Prix. That stuff's going to go away. But there's USA Cycling is pretty confident that their national championship schedule is going to go ahead. They did have to cancel collegiate, which usually in May. But the collegiate conferences were all shut down because of restrictions on sports. So it just didn't make sense to do it. But they're going full steam ahead, and I do the timing for the mountain bike national championships. So I'll be out in Colorado in July doing that. I typically work with a friend of mine who has the contract for Tour of Utah, but Tour of Utah has been canceled for this year. I don't know if that's not going to happen. But we do a lot of that. I do a lot of UCI cyclocross racing. We work at the Jingle Cross race in Iowa. I do, Charm City down in Baltimore. So a lot of big events like that. We do timing for the Doylestown Crit, Pennsylvania.
Do you see super exciting? At least I think you get to see a lot of the best racing in the country and a lot of different racing. And it sounds like the schedule's starting to fill, which is a good sign. Again, I think we have to be cautiously optimistic. Do you see that road racing, like you said, there may be some overlapping, and I think traditionally speaking, cross has started earlier and earlier, so there was always a little bit of overlap with the end of road season. Do you see, and do you maybe foresee that with some of the races you're hosting yourself and promoting, that some of them are going to get pushed back to September, October on the road, or is that not really a conversation yet? Is it more like Labor Day has traditionally been kind of the last hurrah? There's a few races that fall after that on the Northeast, but not that many, certainly not in the New York City area.
Yeah, because there weren't races, I'm not sure how much you will see. I think there'll be some. I know another race that I work with, a friend of mine does, there's a 2-day crit in Indianapolis that typically is in July. They've moved to the second week of September. So there's another road event. And that's, the same weekend as Doylestown, which is typically the second week of December. Charlie runs the Fall Classic in the beginning of October. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe Charlie's able to secure an extra date that the park has open. Maybe he has another race. I think we might see some of that stuff. This will be a good segue into Floyd Bennett, but I'm not opposed to possibly doing something out there if we have the opportunity. Weekends are difficult because of the campsites and things, but even if we had to do something on a Tuesday and start it a little bit early at 4 or 5 and take a day off from work and do a fall race, maybe we can do something. I don't know that we can do that. We haven't really discussed that yet. We have been in discussions with the park, National Park Service, and the people that run Floyd Bennett. As soon as we can do something, we'll be back there too. There's some issues there with, just employees in the park that have been furloughed and things that sometimes it's not even, we can't have the race because of a restriction, but it could just be there's no staff or. So we are in contact with the National Park Service, which, runs Floyd Bennett Field. And, as soon as we can have racing there, you guys will be getting advertisements and you'll know all about it. I'm anxious to get back out there.
Yeah, that's the Tuesday night series, another popular staple of the New York City area scene. So that sounds like maybe June, maybe later, who knows? Obviously, you can't promise anything. I don't want to make you promise anything. But I think that also brings up that a lot of it is, of course, permitting. A lot of it is the authorities giving you the permits. A lot of it is, of course, looking at vaccine numbers and being cautious there. What do you think has led to June kind of sounding like the starting point? Is it mostly the permitting? I think USA Cycling, we've seen some races down in Florida. I know Florida's doing everything a little different, but in the Northeast, everybody seems to start to agree that May, June, I see some races now popping up. I see Trooper Brinkhoff series a little further north, upstate New York, popping up in June now. So do you think this is, with the promise of vaccines hopefully being available to everybody in May, that's kind of where everybody's landed, or were there some other factors involved? That you mentioned furloughing of employees at Floyd Bennett, so there's a lot more going on than just that.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of strange things that you wouldn't think of. One of the problems that mountain bike racing is running into, most of the mountain bike races are run in state or county parks. And because nobody can go on vacation or go to the gym, park usage is up like 200 or 300%. So there's a lot of parks that aren't issuing special event permits because there's so many people using the park. So you would never even think that would be an issue, but it is. So there's a lot of behind the scenes things that people just don't see. But with the numbers coming down the way they have, I mean, they've kind of plateaued, but overall the numbers have gotten a lot better. Vaccines are becoming available a lot faster than anticipated. It's become pretty apparent in the last 12 months that being outdoors and competing, or being outdoors, is the safest thing we can do. So that plays into it. A year ago, I was worried about who's going to, the porta-johns, the registration table, the contact points. And we've learned that the contact points really aren't that dangerous. It's really aerosols. It's really that's how it's transmitted. So being outdoors is one of the safest places we can be. So we've learned a lot too. And we've used that to develop our protocols and our guidelines and how we want to keep everybody safe. Because ultimately, and I'm maybe a little more cautious than I need to be, but I don't want to be I don't want to be that guy.
Well, especially not if that's your profession, right? I think you're
Right.
really putting your professional reputation on it. And I think one thing you mentioned too is that, becomes clear, is it really depends on the venue, right? I would imagine that in terms of crowd control and all those kind of things, Floyd Bennett is a lot easier to run than Somerville, say, or like you mentioned, the mountain bike and the race in the parks. And here we have Central Park, where, like you said, a lot of people have been pushed into the parks because of not being able to travel much and not being able to go on vacation or not being able to do other things that they would usually be doing. So I would imagine that some of your events are in some ways a lot easier to run and put on earlier, or without having to think too much about the risks, than others.
Absolutely. And that's why you see us racing early at Central Park and Prospect Park. And because, we have to be out of there before the crowds are there. So it is a concern, and you're going to see smaller races come back faster than the really big races because of the crowds, because of the protocols, because of, we don't, if there's one of the things we considered last year was, like, even if we could have had a race, was it smart to do it to ask the ambulance crews and the police to be out there when the emergency rooms or the ICUs are full? Like, that's a consideration, even though we might have been perfectly safe to have a race in that town, it wasn't the right thing to do. So that's all stuff that goes into what we look at and what, what's going to make sense. And, there were some great events last year. The Velodrome out in T-Town, they ran a time trial series that was very well regulated, very well attended. I mean, we sold out almost every week, but it's a venue that lends itself to control. I mean, you can control what's going on there a lot easier than a downtown crit. So every venue, every race is a little bit different, but there's some really good guidelines and protocols in place that I think will get us back. I mean, there's been a lot of bigger running events starting to happen, and we can take information from that. Your gravel rides, your fondos, your mountain bike races, they're a little easier because you can do wave starts and things. A crit, and we have to race together.
We do. Well, yeah, we all try to, right? So
Yep.
yeah,
we try
to get away. Yeah. Well, I hope we can all come out of Somerville in September on Labor Day and look back at a pretty busy June, July, and August that we enjoyed some racing in, and say, well, we had a good season. It sounds like you're working really hard to make it happen, Tom. Any other events that are kind of in the New York City area that you're involved in planning, have heard of, that are in the making or aren't going to disappear, that we should keep an eye on, or is a lot of it still too tentative to really talk about?
I know that Harlem Skyscraper, they still have some meetings coming up, so they haven't made a decision one way or the other. So as of right now, Harlem is planning on moving forward.
And that's in June, right? So
yeah, that's on the end of June. So again, it's a little bit later into the season, so it should fall into it. I think most of your typical races you would see later in the season, I think people are planning on those races happening. Certainly you'll see stuff drop off or come back or be postponed or move around a little bit. But I think the back half of this year we'll start to see things a little more normal. I think we'll have a pretty solid cyclocross season. So it's hopefully we can just keep doing the right thing, keep wearing the masks, keep just let's get this behind us so we can get back to what we love doing.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for your work, Tom, your hard work. And thank you, hopefully for all the events you're going to be putting on. And then we hope that all works out. And thank you for talking here on NYC Bike Culture. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And we'll see everybody out on the road.
It's early April, and we're here with Alex Koch, who is one of the race promoters in New York City. Thank you, Alex. You just had actually your first 2 race weekends, which were both time trials in Central Park and Prospect Park. And you also just already told me that you have some updates, or you have you're seeing some movement in terms of permitting and parks. And I've talked to a couple of the other race organizers, Charlie and Tom, and they see movement too, and they're shooting kind of for June. And I just want to see what your plans are. But maybe you can start by talking about how the first 2 time trials went. I think you had pretty decent turnout, and you coordinated that with a local duathlon organizer who's been doing a lot of duathlons in the past. So how did that go for you, and what are your plans from there? I think those are the 2 questions we have.
All right. Well, the very first race of every year is always a big headache because, people didn't warm up yet, and, crew doesn't didn't do it for a while, and it's very hard to put it together because wheels are still not spinning, so you have to start turning it. And it was triple play for me in terms of difficulty, because it was first race of the season, then it was first race at new location, and it was raining, so it was total disaster for me. I'm surprised that I actually was able to survive that race without a big problem. Yes, it was some issue with timing, but that was a little unexpected, a little hardware issue, a little bit of everything. So, but overall, I believe that it went through very good. Yes, I couldn't give away prizes right away, but in the pouring rain, not many people would have stayed and wait for their prizes, and time trials usually don't have anything expensive. So, people don't really expect much. Because, it's a lot of fields, I had 18 fields, and for 18 fields times 3, it's 54 prizes. And total participants, it's 122. So it's for one prize for every second person. It's not affordable.
Yeah, of course. But it sounds like the first one with the rain, maybe in some ways that was better, and that you didn't have too many people in the park either. I think the one this past Saturday, it sounded like it was really cold in the morning, so you had a different issue. But you feel like you were a little bit more warmed up in terms of the race organization, and everything went a little bit better there?
Yeah, looks like, you see, since it was already second race, yes, it was a new location for me, but at least that location I know very good, because at some point when I was racing actively and stuff like this, I start feeling like a hamster in the wheel in Prospect Park, because I knew every little bump over there on the road, every little turn of the curb, everything. and it was easier from this perspective. But overall, for the crew, it was still a new location, especially for marshals and stuff like this. So I spent 2 days drawing. I found a map in a vector format, and I used that map of the Prospect Park, and I was drawing specific locations, showing the arrows. You have to be right here. The sign should be right here, and I put a list of what each marshal is supposed to do. Like, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to have on you following equipment, whistle, vest, flag, radio. The radio should be on the channel 3, and all possible details, because I knew that since it's a very new place for most of the marshals, it's very hard for them to figure out what exactly I want from them. And you see that overall worked out very well. I'm very happy that we have reliable marshals that are really serious about safety and stuff, because for example, one of the marshals, I believe in 2019, he is national masters champion in bicycles. So he is a very strong rider too, and his wife also riding bicycles, racing bicycles. So we have a few bike messengers. So those people are not people from the street, because I better pay more for such people and have work done properly and know that I'm covered, I'm safe as much as I can, compared to get some sort of guys from the street and they will be like staying on the side of this corner and just watching movies on their cell phone,
Absolutely. So talking about safety, sounds like no major issues, no concerns.
The only big concern,
a little bit easier to spread out probably in terms of COVID with the time trial, since it's 112 participants is still a lot, but they have different start times, so that obviously makes it a little bit easier too.
Right. The thing is, the only concern I had, it was in the Central Park at the very first race, when I tried to start all the equipment together so I can do timing, because I have to do manual time and I can't afford to pay for timing company. I pressed the button and all the equipment started, and then I realized that the computers, they don't work correctly, because something got messed up, because over the winter I had to add possibility to time duathlons and triathlons to the program. So when I was making a huge upgrade to the program, it messed up the time trial side. So literally I was like, okay, no matter what, I have to start the race because time is running out. The time frame is very tight and stuff like this. I was like, okay, I'm going to have about 35 minutes to fix that issue as soon as I will get to the finish line. So I started the equipment. I knew that the time already is saved and everything is fine from this perspective. But at the same time, I had to figure out what to do in this situation. So I actually restarted the equipment, and only from second time I start sending out people. And that delay made people a little bit crowded. And park representative always at those events, they're always watching. So she was looking at it, and she immediately like, what is this going on here? So she almost shut down the race because people start bunching up and stuff like this. So my friend Ron from New York Triathlon, he came with the megaphone, and he was trying to spread out people, and people like, who is this guy? Like, why he is telling us to do something, But I didn't realize before the race that it's going to be such a big issue and stuff like this, because it's not like people are very, very crowded to each other, but in the same time, from park representative perspective, she's far away and she doesn't see exactly what distance people have. but she see that they're kind of grouped together. So to her, it looked like they're too tight to each other, you know. So that was a major issue with Central Park, but so far we didn't have any negative stuff from that situation. So I think it's fine. Hopefully, with Prospect Park, everything went smooth. No complaints, nothing. I sent email the night before the race that guys, as soon as you finish, just disappear from transition area, because you know I didn't want anyone to group and have any chance to get any hard time with Prospect Park too about crowding and stuff, you know.
Yeah, I think that's a lot on the racers too, right? I think you have to keep reminding them, and I think we can do better there too, before and after the race, that we even, you know, keep a little bit more distance, especially right now still. Let's transition a little bit, since those two events overall went pretty well, and I think you've learned something from it, obviously, with new locations for you. I know that you have a few more time trials planned in both Central Park and Prospect Park, and those dates are already set, if I'm not mistaken. And then tell us a little bit about that, and then tell us a little bit again about other race plans that you have for 2021. And I know, like with the other organizers, everything's pending a little bit approval and changes and vaccination and COVID situation overall.
All right, the situation with those dates, it's pretty much just a pigtail on duathlon and triathlon races, because, you know, I don't try to take over Prospect Park or Central Park. I'm not trying to step on somebody's toes. It's just I don't want to lose opportunity to put my race, especially if I'm not taking anything away from other people. So I'm not trying to take anything from other race organizers. I'm not trying to get on somebody's toes and stuff like this. But I see opportunity that I can cooperate with a triathlon guy, and it helps him in terms of that we share some of the personnel like marshals and stuff. So in that case, we can divide the cost, and it helps overall, you know. And overall, it works out quite well for both of us. So that's why, you know, instead of wasting opportunity, yes, I will try to use those dates for bicycle races.
Those venues are pretty much set, and like you said, you're coordinating with. We can see it on your background, the New York Triathlon group, and that obviously works well, like you said, in terms of shared responsibility and work and permitting costs and time and effort. That makes a lot of sense. Now I know you said there's emails here on a Monday, the first Monday in April, going back and forth, and things are still spinning. So things are still moving. But I know that you've done for the last year or two Randall's Island races, and you've also explored Corona Park as a new race venue, if I understand that correctly. So where are you with that right now? Again, understanding that things are changing every day or every week probably, and what are your rough plans, at least for 2021, with those?
All right. Corona Park is still under construction. When I got there first time back in the end of 2019, I went there with my teammate, and when we've been driving around the park, because it's open for cars, and we saw all those huge puddles in the road and mud at some place and stuff like this. He was like, Alex, this is impossible to have race here. It's more like swimming than biking, because, you know, literally some of those puddles, they were over 1 foot deep. So if you're in a passenger car, the water would have rushed by the seals, by the doors, you know, inside your car. But I was like, but Prospect Park is all booked, Central Park is all booked. I need to find something because at Randall's Island, it's not really possible to put more than 100 people total for all the fields together.
So in terms of Corona Park, then, assuming that the drainage issues can be fixed, whether this year or whenever, or if maybe it's something that could be a thing for next season, like 2022, this is going to be some sort of circuit race, or what are you
It's pretty
envisioning?
much going to be the same like Prospect Park, but it's a less busy park. So most likely we will have 2 waves, total 4 fields. So because it's 2.5 miles loop instead of 3.3 in the Prospect Park. So overall, it's much easier for me to get permits at Corona Park right now because they kind of feel like they kind of owe me for what I did for them. So if Randall's Island permits won't work out as easy, I may have to start road races with Corona Park. And then as time goes, maybe it will be possible to add more Randall's Island. But I guess at the time when Randall's Island will be available, it's already will be available the Prospect Park, Central Park, and everyone will be like very picky, like, oh, I don't want to do this race, I will do that race, because
I think
before we
June,
had such situation.
Yeah, June, July, August will get very crowded. So knowing that, when you're thinking about assuming that you can get permits for one or both of these 2 venues, are you thinking of a weekday series or thinking a weekend series or both a little bit, or what are your ideas?
Well, since other race directors, they announced that they plan to start their races in the middle of June, I'm planning to try to get weekends in Corona Park and Randall's Island up to middle of June. And after that, I may do the workday series like Tuesdays or Thursdays, because Wednesdays booked by Kisina. I don't want to interfere with them. Friday too close because next day big races. Monday also too close. So the only 2 days left is Tuesday and Thursday. But then I have to make sure that I don't step on Tom Main's toes with Floyd Bennett Field, because I don't know exactly when he's planning to start, and that I don't affect the Rockley race with my races because they're on Thursday. So you see, if everything is back to normal, then it's getting very crowded and like literally very, very hard to find the spot to put the race in.
I think as racers, we're very much spoiled in New York City, right? And right now, I think we're all thirsty and hungry for races. But I think the reality might be that we have too many almost, or not too many. I think, like you mentioned, Rockley, but I think if you have a race at Corona, Randall's Island that doesn't really compete with Rockley so much, I think the people who would go to Corona are not the same people who go all the way out to Rockley, which is a pretty far trip too. So, but I think you're right. I think obviously it makes sense to look at the weekends and try to stay clear of them. And if you can have some races before, that would be your ideal scenario. Are you looking into the fall too, or is it for now just the focus and the energy goes into, I know the time trial dates for the 2 parks, and then for Corona and Randall's Island, hopefully something sounds like already maybe in May, early June, and then that's your focus right now, or have you thought about the fall as well?
The thing is that at this moment I have to work off the wheels, so it's like literally I can't plan too far in advance, unfortunately, because I don't know what are going to be the plans of CRCA and Charlie. If they will say like, okay, since we start our season in the middle of June, we will run races all the way to November or something like that, then I have to adjust to what they put, because I'm a very small guy, and my opinion and my schedule is probably the very last on the list, so. And I understand my races are not as important as those races for community. So when those guys are saying like, okay, I have this, and this dates. I'm like, okay, go ahead. I will try to switch my dates, get around your dates, so we won't conflict or something. But I understand it's very hard for them because schedule in Central Park and Prospect Park is very booked, and like I know that some of the dates are conflicting with each other and stuff like this. So hopefully they will be able to sort it out.
It sounds like you were very busy figuring out a lot of different permits. You got to deal with so many different agencies there too, and stakeholders. So we appreciate that, and I think if Corona Park works out, it'd be very exciting to have a new race venue. And I think Queens hasn't had much representation in terms of race venues, so hopefully that'll be an exciting new addition. And I think in terms of the fall, like you said, I think we'll have to see. It doesn't look, from my vantage point, from what I've seen, very likely that there'll be additional dates in Central Park and Prospect Park. So who knows? I think that's it from my side, Alex. I appreciate you sharing with us your tentative plans. Again, fully understanding that they're tentative, but I would be excited to see the Corona Park race, and it sounds like that you very much have in mind to giving opportunities for the newer riders, the Cat 5 riders, and people to get experience and upgrade points. And I think that's always been an emphasis of your races, and I think that's really important too, with us having lost a year of racing, where at least in theory we have a lot of new and excited people that want to race and that want to get into road racing. So hopefully that will be the reality come June, July, August. I think you're right that outside of CRCA, for the longest time, women didn't really have any fields to race. The Tuesday night series started adding a field, I think, in the 2019 season. So there's a little bit more opportunities now, and hopefully with the newer venues that you're exploring, there'll be more of that. I don't want to take too much more of your time, Alex. Thank you very much. Your races will be on Bike Reg, like everybody else's too, so everybody should keep their eyes open there. And I know you're communicating through the Verrazano team's like social media too. So we're looking forward to that, to seeing some more races. Hopefully everything will stay safe. And yeah, if you're interested in those races, Rockaway channel, what is it?
Beach Channel Drive.
Great. Lots of things still up in the air. I think that's the reality right now in this season. You're exploring a lot. 2022 will probably be better for you after you've learned a lot from this year too. Thank you very much, Alex, for sharing your plans for now, and I hope at least most of them work out. So
all right, thank you so much for inviting me, and I hope that your channel will grow. I really enjoy watching stuff on your channel. I get to know a lot of things about people who I know from the races and stuff like this. But at the race, it's more like, hey, how did you do? What place did you get? Oh, great job and stuff like this. But you don't really get to know people too much because they're like on a different team, and you don't really go like to hang out with them and stuff like this. So you guys are doing a great job, and it really helps people to understand each other better, and you really bond in the cycling community in one piece. And I really appreciate it. It's a very tough job because when people have a little bit more opportunity to learn about each other, and for example, someone might be looking at me like some evil guy and stuff like this, and then he will watch the video and he will be like, okay, maybe I confused about this, maybe I was confused about that and stuff like this. So he will kind of understand that I'm not a demon in a human body or something like that,
I think you certainly aren't, Alex. Thank you for the kind words. The goal is definitely to create a little bit more communication and unity and understanding and connections. And I think the way you talk about working with other race organizers' schedules, I think it's fairly clear that I think overall you have very clearly the racers' interests in mind. You're putting races on, and you're doing a lot of hard work dealing with all those permits and the exploring of new race venues, which is, I think, all of which is really important work for the community. And I think if we keep the conversations going in the community, that's what I'm hoping to contribute to a little bit in the limited capacity that I have. So